A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Very good morning from Saudi Arabia and a very good afternoon to you all. My name is Abdul Okamara. MSc Islamic Finance at INCEIF, and this is my last semester. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, thank you. So on behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome everyone to our second INCEIF Research Sharing Series. Thank you for joining us in this session. However, before we start, I would just like to remind you before we begin, I hope everyone can please mute their microphone. And if you have questions to ask, please do type them in the chat box. We will have a question and answer series at the end of the presentation. I will read out your question to our Prof. As introduction, INCEIF Knowledge Management Center, which is KMC, is organizing INCEIF Research Sharing Series to promote publications by faculty members to research and academic work. The first session of this series was conducted in September 2021, featuring our own INCEIF faculty member, Associate Professor Dr. Maida Ismail Abdel Muhsin, who shared about her journal article, A Brief History of Wakaf, an Islamic Socio-Financial Institute of Philanthropic Endowment. For today's session, we have invited Professor Dr. Saiful Azhar Rosly to share on the journal article that he wrote, entitled Structuring Fund for Affordable Housing Investment in Malaysia. This was an exploratory research. However, before we start, I would invite the speaker. Let me share with you our speaker's background. Professor Dr. Saiful obtained his PhD in economics from University Kebangsaan, Malaysia in 1994. He mainly teaches Islamic banking and risk management with research interest and publication in Sharia non-compliant risks. The investment account fund, legal and ethical problems besieging the Islamic banking sector, such as the lack of pricing theory of Islamic debt instruments, the absence of ownership risks in murabaha financing, and the misconception of al-bay as an alternative to riba. He has formerly served as independent director for EO Bank and the Federation of Investment Manager Malaysia, commonly known as FIM. And currently, he is a Sharia committee member for BSN Prudential Takaful. Now, let's welcome our speaker, Professor Dr. Saiful Azhar Rosly, to share about the journal article, Structuring Fund for Affordable Housing Investment in Malaysia, like I said, an exploratory research. Prof. Saiful, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Brother Kabara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How's everybody today?
Alhamdulillah, we are good.
Okay. Basically, this is a INCEIF Research Sharing activity, and therefore my approach here would be a bit more on the academic side, in the sense that I will be trying to provide the processes and what had happened until we are able to publish the paper. Basically, actually, this is a paper. Let me just make sure that, yes, this is basically a paper funding structure for affordable housing. This is basically based on a thesis written by Dr. Arif Muhammad Daud, who is currently a lecturer at the UITM Terengganu. And the thesis was supervised by myself and Professor Zulkarnain Matsuri. Right, as usual, we are able to obtain a grant from the Ministry of Education through the INCEIF collaboration, and that grant was spent, for survey and many other things. And I was lucky enough, as a person who applied for the grant, to go to Spain to present this paper in one of the IFC conference. That was in 2019, before the pandemic. We were fortunate to be able to present our ideas at the policy level, which is basically at the Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs in 2019 at the NACOL committee meeting. And we have several ministers presiding the meeting. And further discussion, the idea was brought to the operating level. And then we were basically, we were engaged with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning to further look into the possibility of, making this idea a reality. But then because of the COVID-19, so things were a bit slow. Inshallah, we do hope that, as we proceed, we will be able to, get this thing moving. Of course, based on the, the budget, the latest budget 2020, that has allocated about 1.3 billion ringgit, for low-cost housing. So this is a very great development, in making sure that the B40 or M40 group are able to have access to housing facility, right? And here, this is basically the paper that was published last year. Published in the Journal of Housing and Policy, published by Emerald Publishing, which is Scopus 2 or Scopus 3, inshallah. One more, inshallah, will be coming out. And well, I'm not going to talk actually about affordable housing per se, because our main focus is to look at the supply side of the affordable housing issue. The fact that we see that a lot has been done by government to encourage or to assist the people in home purchases. On the demand side, we are referring to exemption of stamp duties and whatnot. But then what is missing is basically how we can increase the supply of affordable housing. And to do that, we have to look at the cost and pricing factor of the affordable housing. This is basically, our, this is one of our presentation at the ministry, and I have here, this is Dr. Arif Daud, already graduated, and then Professor Zulkarnain, and that's me basically. And yes, okay, let us go and see what we can do today. Okay, this is housekeeping. What is affordable housing? Okay, it is basically homes ranging from RM 150K to 300K and less than 1,000 square feet. So it's quite, not big, quite 800, 900 would be the maximum. Some are even smaller than that. And there's a location, meaning that there should be a connectivity to the public transport, especially the LRT or MRT or the KTM. And yes, we see that the budget 2022, the government has allocated 1.5 billion ringgit for low-cost housing. Of course, prior to that, the previous government make quite hefty promises For example, the supply of 1 million affordable housing within 10 years, meaning that there's a need, for any government who is in control to fulfill this target, because these are forecasted targets that need to be fulfilled so that the people can have decent shelter, to protect themselves from, from the vagaries of nature. And so this is basically the main idea. The main idea is how can we basically supply that amount of affordable homes by and of course it is already 2021 and end of 2021, and we do hope that the respective stakeholders, are coming in to assist the people, in getting to assist the people to purchase the homes that they are much needing. So this is basically our proposal, basically to increase the supply of affordable homes. And one of the problem here, the problem of affordable housing basically is that the affordable housing are not affordable at all. It is called affordable housing, but when it is in the market, they are not affordable, simply because the income levels and the price of the property are not incongruent, right? They are not in proportion. Now we have, for example, the one modality, the income multiple approach, that can serve as a yardstick to determine whether or not that particular income class or is able to purchase that property. So we look at the multiple median approach, which is 3. 3 will be the optimal number. Above 3, it will be unaffordable. So it's very easy. So meaning that if you have an income, if our monthly income is right here. Yes, if our monthly income is 10,000, right, and so we multiply by 12 and multiply by 3, right? So that will give us 360,000 dollar property that we should be able to afford buying, right? Because that would be the the yardstick of how the price is seen to be one that is affordable to the individual with a $10,000 monthly income. However, if the multiple is more than 3, it means that the house is no longer affordable. So we can see here that in one of the article presented in The Age, you can see that the multiple medium here, I'm not able to see it because my slide is very small here. So you can see that the multiple. Just give me a minute. So the median multiple when we apply, and we can see that for Malaysia, you can see that in almost all states it is above 3, except for Malacca. That was 2016. Export from Malacca, it is 2.67. But if you can look at Kuala Lumpur, it is 6.551, if I'm not mistaken there, right? So meaning that the houses, that we found in the market over the country, they are not affordable. And we can just compare the median income and the median price of the affordable housing. They are so, disproportionately different, and therefore, this is basically one problem, where despite that we work very hard and trying our best to save our money to pay for the down payment, and yet, when it comes to buying, the price of the house is simply not reachable, right? And in Islam, under the Maqasid Sharia, one of the objectives of the Sharia is to promote justice, and to provide the daruri of the human being, the basic necessity, among which include shelter, housing, right? And that is one of the basic needs that must be fulfilled. But then, because of the fact that the nature of the market is such that these houses are not within our reach to purchase. The issue here is B40, for example. B40, there are a lot of low-cost houses, but there is not enough houses for the M40, and the middle M40 and the lower M40. So these are, and the top B40. These are the group, that is basically suffering right now in search for homes. The B40, they have access to low-cost housing, but as you know, usually these houses or these flats, they are built very far away from the city, and our people who work in the urban area in the cities, so they need to basically travel from from the outskirts to the city, and that will cost them money, transport money, and therefore the logistic is also problematic. Not that there is not enough low-cost housing. There are enough low-cost housing, but simply the location are not suitable to assist the population. And but despite this, despite the shortage of affordable housing, we can see that there is a lot of property overhang, right? In the sense that property developer may have developed or produced apartments that are not meant for the M40 and upper M40. Maybe these are for the top 20% of the population, right? So there is some kind of resource misallocation, where margin can be made better if the developer is to build this kind of housing, not luxury, but there are basically at the 500,000, so you can see here that from 300 to 500,000 we have 8,000 plus unit not sold. Between 2,000 to 3,000, 200,000 to 300,000, there are about 7,000 plus not sold. So the total, value of the, property overhang is, about $19.7 billion, of property not sold. So this is some kind of a misfiring, of targets, and this is something that we do not want to see happening for long. And again, you can see that, for example, in the Prima housing, right? Let's say for a minimum income of 3,000, the home available is 150,000, and that is equivalent to the median income multiple of 4.1, which is above 3. So if you were to apply, and they are not affordable, if you were to apply the 3, this is the median income multiple of 3, then the price that this income group should be able to afford is 108,000, basically. Yeah? So there is a 150, yeah, 150. So there is a 100, 22,000 variants, that need to be managed. So if we can find a way how to construct homes of this value 108,000, then perhaps the people should be able to afford the homes. So we can see here the 3,000 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 3. So we get our 108,000. And likewise, you can see here. So this is basically for B40 3,000. The affordable price will be 108. For M40 5,000. This is the lower M40 at medium income multiple of 3. Then the affordable price will be 108. Okay, so right now, the issue here is, how can we make housing affordable? If the market price is 101, if it is 400,000, how can we make it to be at 360? Right. So meaning that we need to look at some other aspect of the affordable housing universe here, which is to look at the pricing and the costing of affordable housing. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is the research objective. This is the academic, what normal student when they do proposal, thesis proposal, and they have to somehow present their research objective and what are the way and means for them to achieve it. The first research objective is to basically understand the issues surrounding affordable housing in Malaysia. And RO2 is basically to look at the cost structure of the affordable housing. And number 3 is basically to see if our next step is to generate or to produce more affordable housing, then one of the component of the pricing and cost of affordable housing is the funding. So how can we fund this particular affordable housing project in which we can reduce the cost so that it can be within the multiple medium of 3, actually. And for RO3, so we did a survey to explore the investment intention of investors, basically. So we feel that the only entity that is capable of, providing a meaningful solution to this particular problem is the institutional investor. Tabung Haji, EPF, and SOCSO. So these are the entities that have billions of dollars at their disposal for investment. And when the affordable housing fund is structured, and we need to basically explore to what extent EPF or SOCSO or Tabung Haji are willing to invest in the fund. Okay, so that is basically the issue here. And then And of course, if you look when we look at the issues surrounding affordable housing, I think most of you may have come across some of the issues, government policies. These are basically concerning allocation of for allocation for low-cost housing and fiscal incentive, and these are policy matters. Urban design and planning. So this one of the problem is that most of these affordable housing flats are built away from the cities. No doubt that they are affordable, but when we add on the cost of transportation to Kuala Lumpur, to Georgetown, so that you add that cost onto the price of the house, then it doesn't make sense to buy the property which is away from the city. So supply and demand. So these are referring to the cost and the capacity to purchase and obtaining financing facility from bank. Financing, again, a lot of the B40s and M40s, they may not be able to buy because they're not qualified enough. They're not viable enough to take a loan because of the fact that the price of the house is simply too high, and because of that they have to come up with high amount of down payment, which I think is very difficult to obtain, right? And supply quota. So what we have done in this particular analysis is to see that one of the issue of affordable housing is the cost of development of affordable houses. So this is where I would like to basically we look at the price of affordable housing for any price, whether we are referring to housing for the top 20 or for M40 or B40. We can see at least there are about 5 components of the price element, right? Number one is the land cost, right? The land cost. If the affordable housing is to be built in the cities, of course, the land cost can be awesome, and that would not be good. Of course, all of this land in the cities are meant for luxury condominiums. Land cost. So land cost basically takes about 10 to 20% of the gross development value, and the construction costs, the cement, the steel, and all that raw material required, to develop the property. This basically ranging from 40 to 70% of the gross development value. All right, and then we got compliance costs, meaning that developer need to provide utilities, water and electricity, schools, so they have to fork up those. So that compliance costs made up about 10 to 20% of the gross development value, GDV. Finance costs, how much would the developer need to borrow, and at what finance charge? But this is again about 5 to 7%. And finally would be the development profit, developer's profit, the profit margin that developers take, and that would be between 20 to 50%, right? So this is one of the concern that we have about the fact that because developers, if they were to do low-cost housing or medium-cost housing, the margin would not be as attractive if they were to build luxury condos, right? So most developers, go for that particular high profit margin, properties, and therefore that is why we see there's a lot of those properties available and still not in the market as yet. Nobody is interested to buy because no one can afford it right now. Okay, so yes. Now this is our proposal, actually. Our proposal, so meaning that if we were to, let's say, if the price of the affordable housing is 400,000, and we want to reduce the price from this is at 4.2 multiple median multiple at 3 basically the price is 360, right? 360, right? At 3 median multiple at 3, then the price would be 360, which is about 40,000 less. Now, how can we basically reduce the price from 400,000 to 360, right? Is it possible for us to, look at some of these cost, factor that we can control? Land cost, for example. So land cost, one of our proposal is to have the land given free of charge by the government. Whether we are looking at affordable housing at the state level, then the state government, of course, they have lots of land, they can give it free, and then that will be able to, just discount that particular land cost, and therefore it should be able to help reduce the price. Reduction of construction costs may not be, possible, because I think for the past few years, the price has been stable. Of course, right now we are speaking about COVID, so price have gone up, and that's something that we cannot really, control. Compliance costs. This is something that can be looked into if the utilities company, the Tenaga Nasional and Telecom, if they were compassionate enough, to provide some, subsidies, or basically they will, provide. They will basically build the facilities, but maybe not free of charge, but may not be charging the developer 100% for that. Maybe some discount is given. So that is one possibility, where through the ESG, ESG mandate given to big corporation. So maybe the Tenaga Nasional, or or Telecom, and they should be able to give some, concession to the developer. So this is one possibility. Finance costs. So this is also one possibility if the developer is able to have access to funds at a lower cost, right? So we have 5 to 7% of the GDV. And if we are able to, structure a fund in which the finance charge are manageable, and it reflects also the ESG concern. So those investors who are, running on the ESG mandate, so they may want to consider investing in that fund. Right. The other one would be the developer's profit margin. So this is one of the way how we can, attract developers. If the developers are able to reduce the margin, let's say minimum of 20% gross margin. Of course, many will disagree. 20% margin, they will say, how can we eat with 20% margin? But again, if we are able to provide some funding to the developer, and that funding with a lower finance charge, then that would be one way how to compensate the developer, for participating in the affordable housing project. And these developers, I presume that these are small and medium scale developers, not the big giant developers that we know today. So if they are able to get a lot of projects, affordable housing projects, so they can roll over, their expertise, and therefore in the longer run, they should be able to do well in this type of project, right? So our main concern here is, number one, that if the government is able to give free land or leasehold, over 100 years, land with no leasehold, basically it is free of charge, then I can see that there is some possibility of reducing the price from 400 to 360. So we can basically look at the to have some concession on land costs, and if we are able to sit down and look at a funding structure that can somehow help us mobilize funds to build affordable housing. So this is also one possibility where we can reduce the price, and of course we can try to find developers who are willing to reduce their margin at least between 20 to 30%. Right, so this is basically what we are trying to see, and the rest of the presentation will be about the financing costs. So how can we basically structure a fund in which we are able to attract enough investor, and there are no other than the institutional investor that I have mentioned earlier, and to make this a success, right? And you can see here, okay, we have done this also. And because what I'm trying to say is the fact that we can structure a fund, but the problem here is whether we are able to attract people to invest in the fund. Right, structuring a fund is not a rocket science, but then getting the investor in, that would be the challenge, right? And of course, we are dealing with financing. So right now, our focus would be how to mobilize a fund such that the fund can be used by the developer to basically undertake the project. Developers, they can obtain funding, from various, various party, from banks, from Bank Pembangunan, from commercial bank. They may have their own, their own capital, but the fact that developers need funding, and we are looking at the role of Islamic finance in the funding of affordable housing, right? And of course, in Islamic finance, you all know quite well that the central bank has been promoting the value-based intermediation concept, VBI, in which one of the highlight is the role of Islamic finance in Sharia compliant, social responsible funding, right? So this is looking at the trust given to the Islamic bank, as an Islamic organization that will champion the ESG value, but with the Sharia, Sharia element guiding the implementation of ESG, and So one of the way how Islamic finance can be of use is, of course, to see how can we structure a fund in which there is some element of responsible financing, right? Responsible financing, ethical financing. So meaning that the investor, they have concern for the social weal of the population, right? And so that would be, one of the main, ingredient of our proposal here. And so basically here, this is basically the argument. House not affordable, so then the solution is to build more affordable housing, at the appropriate price. The issue here, we need funding. And then we have to look for the entity that possess the funds, and these are basically the institutional investor, right? So we develop a fund to attract EPF, Tabung Haji, SOXO, and all that. So this is basically what we are looking at. We have actually, meaning that the study have actually surveyed opinions of institution from PNB, from EPF, from KWEP, and basically what they are saying is that the fund must be an asset class. If it is categorized as an asset class, then it is possible for them to invest in. Yeah, and just like a bond, a sukuk, or bond or mutual fund, these are basically financial asset and which is capable to attract institutional investor. Okay, just a bit more here, and yes, okay. So again, I'm repeating. So these are the three main focus that we think that have a viable, that can prove to be a viable option, meaning that land to be provided by the state and federal government at zero cost. Of course, we did met with the Kementerian Perumahan dan Perancangan Bandar, and they basically say that the Kementerian, they have parcels of land that can be mobilized, for this kind of affordable housing. So meaning that the state government, the federal government can in fact provide land at zero cost for affordable housing project. We also have a chance to talk to the Perak Housing Board 2018, and at the same time, they were very very open to this idea of basically providing land at zero cost to build the affordable housing. Cost of fund will be lower than the market rate via ESG Affordable Housing Fund. So again, we are trying to see if it is possible to structure a fund in which the cost will be lower than market rate, and therefore we would be able to lower the cost element in the affordable housing. Of course, reducing profit margin by participating developers, that will be a tough job to do. But if this is pursued with a strategic intention, then perhaps I think it is doable. It is doable in the sense that there are many small and medium scale developers who are willing to participate, who are willing to benefit from any of these, facilities or opportunities to be made available, by the respective authority. And so if you look at the gross margin, 20%, 30%, 40%. So this is when, if you look at the gross development value of 200,000 ringgit, at 20, 30, and 40%, we can see that if the developer charge 40% profit margin, the price would increase from 200 to 333.3, right? And the developer will be taking a profit of 133.3 thousand. Compared with a developer who is charging 20%, where the price of the house would be 250, right? 250 is about 50,000 less than the price which the developer is charging at a 40% profit margin. So you can see that how much deviation there is when developers start charging profit margin that is not acceptable at all. So this is a way how we can entice SME developers to control the profit margin, but then they should be able to get more projects, and able to sustain their business in the longer term. So meaning that maybe first project may not be enough for them to maintain their performance, but we will be getting them back and back, and therefore hopefully after many rounds of development they should be doing quite well. And so what we did here was to run a survey to basically explore what are the factors that is influencing the intention of the institutional investor to invest. So our respondents are mainly executive and above level, and these are basically people from the institutional companies, right? So we are basically looking at, as I say, sample within the investing institution of Tabung Haji, EPF, SOCSO, and the rest, right? So basically, what are the factors that is influencing the intention of the investor to invest? What are the factors determining intention to invest? And these are, the construct that were forwarded, structure and mandate of the fund, market return, social return. Market return can be, it can be competitive, but social return may be on the lower side. But then if the affordable housing is able to evidence, high impact on social welfare, then, a lower return will be sufficient for the investor, right? So there have to be like, one intangible factor that can compensate for the lower rate of return of the fund. Governance and transparency. This is again the fund that were to be structured. Should be able to guarantee that there is proper control, that there is proper disclosure of all transaction in the operation. And government should be supporting this particular project. right? Government should not be letting the project to be swallowed by the market forces. Right? So government should come in to support, and at the same time, there should be some, effort to control the risk associated with this operation of producing affordable housing funded by this particular affordable housing fund. And what we see, based on our study, we see that there are three factors that were found to be influencing the investor. Right. Number one is the social return. So the investor, basically, they don't mind getting or receiving a social return, which is of course lower than the market return. This is something that is that is very very exciting to hear. Of course, we look at SRI Sukuk, Khazanah Sukuk, for example, one of the impact area, meaning that despite the lower return, the additional area that need to be evidenced by the fund is that it is able to actualize the social impact on the stakeholders affected. So social return is a factor significant considered by the investor, and then we have I cannot see this. We got this government. This is government support. So government must or should come in to fully support this affordable housing, because as you know, there are so many problems with it, and we just cannot do it without government support, especially when we are looking at if the government is able to offer free land, to build these houses on, and the governance and transparency. Again, the management of the fund, require control and full disclosure, and that is what matters to the investors. And three factors, and of course there are other three factors that we found not to be significant. Market return does not seem to be a matter to the investor, right? Market return. So the one that we saw significant is the social return. Structure and mandate, again, not significant. I presume that the structure and mandate, it can be it can be structured in many forms, and therefore it can be based on the Sukuk model. It can be based on the property trust property trust fund model. It can be based on the investment account model or banking model. So that mandate, that structure, it can be improved, or it can be further improvised, and therefore it is not really a big matter when it comes to the investor. Risk mitigation, again, risk mitigation is important, but it is not significant. Maybe some of the risk mitigation, can itself become a constraint, to the development of affordable housing. And meaning that if the government are required to guarantee the fund in case the project, does not, fly, this can be again a burden to the government, to keep on providing guarantees to this kind of project. So again, risk mitigation is not that important, but what is more important is governance and transparency. Yeah, that's what we have seen here. That governance and transparency can attract better premium on the yield and so on. Yes. So basically, right. So we think that the financing cost can be reduced, you know, through the investment by the institutional investor, you know, that carry the ESG mandate. So because they are not concerned about market rate, but they see that a social rate is acceptable, you know, given that the impact on social welfare is achievable. That there's a strong desire to participate in providing funding, okay, proper investment structure, right policy in place. Okay, that is basically. So the funding here, you know, can be coming from the capital market as well as from the banking sector. Right. So when we talk about funding, we can mean capital market. We are referring to trust fund, tabung amanah umpamanya, affordable housing property trust fund. This is one of the possible, you know, structure that we can, you know, that we can provide. And of course, the other is to look at potential sukuk issuances. It could be kardu hasan sukuk, it can be ijara sukuk. You know, it depends on what type of, you know, what type of environment we are confronting when we are looking at that particular affordable housing project. Right. And from the banking side, funding can be mobilized using the investment account product. This is basically a new product in Islamic banking, where, you know, people can do investment instead of making placement with the bank, right? So doing investment, we are referring to the fact that the investor are looking for a market rate, right? Or we can also structure an investment account to, you know, especially for those investors who have, you know, full support of the ESG value. So that is also possible. And we have also the investment account platform. This is another, you know, mechanism to mobilize investment account and to basically marry investors with the prospective entrepreneurs, and these entrepreneurs are basically the SME, you know, housing developers who are seeking for funding in order to build those houses. Okay, so that is one. So we can yes, somebody is asking question here. I was not able to see the question. If you can repeat, or you can just unmute your microphone. You can ask question directly to me. I think Dr. Fatin. One of the proposed. Yes. Waalaikumsalam, Dr. Fatin. How are you?
To see you after such a long time. Really, mashallah, wonderful presentation, wonderful research paper, and refreshing topic. I'm very excited to hear about this information and the methodology you have followed, mashallah. My question on factoring the real estate bubble, because one of the solutions mentioned is, you know, reducing the financing to make it more affordable.
Yes.
You know, after, you know, because we cannot, you know, the economy is uncertain, specifically now, things happen that we never factored. So what if these assets become, not valuable as we thought, like what's happening in the US, when the, houses do not hold their value and the finance cost will be higher? Is there any factoring in the equation while, doing this particular research? Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Fatin, good question. But the affordable housing here is not really the type of housing that people would want to speculate. The one that is under heavy speculation are those in the higher level, those particular property that is T20, top M40. These are area where people will take advantage of bank loans, and because as we know that the interest rate has been on a very low side, and it is very cheap to borrow and buy and keep, and that is why we can see there's a lot of property, ghost towns of course, like in China, where people bought property not for staying but for investing. Right, and but that is not happening in the affordable housing sector, because the fact that it may be that the house may go up, meaning that the price of the house is not affordable because of the speculation. So is that what you mean?
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is really clarifying. Thank you.
Yes, because usually what we see here, that the high price is not caused by speculation. Maybe speculation do contribute, to the further increment of the home prices. But then at the IPO level, what I mean is at the sale level of new homes, the price itself is not affordable. Based on the medium scale that I was talking earlier, that basically the price itself is not affordable due to the fact that the price, the land cost is very high, the profit margin taken by the developer is unacceptable. And we have maybe high cost of raw material, but that is we cannot blame on the developer. That is basically market market process. So these are the contributing factor leading to the unacceptable high price of the homes currently. Yes, Dr. Fatin, I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, so we can look at the fund structure, which is straightforward. So meaning that if the fund can be structured and we are able to attract the investor, and therefore the project can be once the fund is made available, and we will put up the respective parameter, meaning that we have the manager, the Sharia advisor, who will make sure that the fund is under Sharia surveillance, property manager, contractor, buyer, tenant, trustee. So these are basically some of the basic infrastructure needed, to ensure that the fund is workable. And we can also look at a sukuk structure that can be made available easily, right? The point here is that who will be investing in the fund? So that would be our main concern here. So what we have seen is that the institutional investor, they have expressed their interest to invest in affordable housing, if the fund is has been categorized as an asset class, and therefore there shouldn't be any problem of mobilizing the fund. So that is basically, from the Sukuk side. But again, the issue here is, like, if, for example, if you were able to convince, for example, the ministry to give a piece of land for the affordable housing project, okay, then of course they will be concerned about who will be the developer, right? How are we going to select the developer? What kind of tendering process that we are going to basically apply, and what will be the mechanism for which we were to select the prospective developer. So these are concerns that need to be addressed by our team here, and the Sukuk structure, and we have anybody trying to ask a question here? We look at the banking. We look at the banking sector, meaning that is it able for us to mobilize funding from the banking sector? Right, of course.
Apologies, I didn't know the location. I was sitting in the first floor.
Yes.
And I thought you will pass by.
So, usually it is difficult to get funding from bank if you don't have the asset and the guarantees. But then, because banks are funded by deposit fund, and deposit funds are basically, guaranteed fund, and therefore, when the bank make loans, to the developer or to the small developer, then there can be a risk of default, then that is where the problem come, given that the bank will have to assess the viability of the developer, but if the bank is able to use the investment account fund, to basically finance the affordable housing project over here, that is something that we can see, something that is viable enough to be applied. Deposit fund, again, as I say, to do affordable housing, then you have to look for a AAA, high rating developer that the bank is willing to give a loan. But for SME developers, whom we say earlier, who are willing to take a smaller margin, then they may not be able to have access to the bank loan funded by deposit fund. But if the affordable housing, the project is to be funded by an investment account fund, which is an equity fund, which is similar to the unit trust fund, then I would say this is a great possibility for the Islamic Bank to not experiment, because I don't see it as as something that will fail, on day one. But of course, the Islamic Bank, they have, for example, they have undertake, some degree of investment account funding based on, the project that was listed in the investment account platform. So the investment account platform is another mechanism by which the bank is able to mobilize funds, to be used by the SME developers, right? And here I'm not able to see this, and here you can see that there's a lot of project funded by the investment account fund, and these projects, are giving an average yield of 6 to 7%, per annum, which is of course much higher than the FD. Of course, the IA is not a debt; it is an equity. So there are some degree of danger in the investment of IA. But then this is one possibility by which bank is able to participate in affordable housing project directly through the investment account landscape, right? Of course, if you were to look at the next, what can we do next? How can we go ahead to implement this idea? And there's a lot of thing to do. We have to set up a team. We have to get government assistance and tender processes, evaluation and selection of the developers, market research, project commencements, and these are things that is beyond the academic purview, and it is this particular area where the engineers, the technocrats will come in, to basically manage the project and therefore able to realize the objective of achieving the affordable housing target over the years. I think that's it I have for today, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. So we do hope that still, we are trying to further, follow up our collaboration with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning. We have met with the Pengarah twice, and God willing, inshallah, as the COVID-19, and the situation currently as it is getting better, hopefully that, that we are able to really, talk to the government and see that some of this project can eventually be, be implemented. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Dr. Saiful, for your presentation. It was indeed a detailed enlightenment given by you on the article. However, we will proceed to the answer session. So we will now begin to answer the questions. However, there was no question sent on the chat box. The only question that was sent has already been answered. If you have any other question, do please in the chat box, or you can ask the Prof himself directly. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Yes, brother.
How are you, Prof? Thank you very much. I think this is quite enlightening in terms of the approach to actually pushing for affordable houses, especially on the price. It's just slightly. I just want to put opinion actually.
Yes.
I know that Singapore implementing HDB.
Yes.
But what I'm interested to say is actually the way that the HDB being implemented, especially when every level of the apartments actually consist of multiple incomes apartments.
Okay.
So the reason why I'm addressing this is because I think, for example, like recently a few years back, I think flat Sri Pahang in Bangsa, I think was demolished to give way for projects that is actually increasing the the price per square foot from, I think, flat Sri Pahang was about, I think, less than 150 ringgit per square feet, and now that particular development now is actually pushing for almost 700 to 1,000 ringgit per square feet.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think my opinion on this is actually, I think probably in Malaysia we can do HDB style, but I think what I'm suggesting, probably policies to be suggested to the government, because I think rather than to have buildings in accordance to the affordable house, then I think forcing for every floor to have an affordable unit probably actually will force probably the cost per square feet to be borne by those that paying more on that particular floor, so that to push down the price of that particular units, and probably using the profits or the cost being probably subsidized by the other units that is actually much more expensive. I mean, that's my thought, because I think the inequality of house ownership in Malaysia, as you show just now in terms of the indexes, I think we can't run away, because we need to push more affordable projects in the center rather than to push out the affordable house to be the outskirt. I mean, that's my opinion. Just to share, I mean, to see your thoughts on that.
Yes. I think, brother, that's a very good, very good proposal. I presume that these ideas are already on the plate. It is a matter of implementation, but this is only possible within a public housing scheme, in which the upper income people, not the super rich, the very rich and super rich, they will go to the private condominium, where no poor people will be allowed to stay there, right? So the private condos are for the only rich, right? But
But Prof,
yes.
I mean, my example just now, I'm talking about flat Sri Pahang, where it's actually located on a piece of land that is actually owned by the municipality, but then again they sold off. So I think the tendency of pushing up all these low cost flats out of this center it seems like becoming a pattern now, and especially like area Pantai Dalam, I think they're going to do that soon.
Yeah, Pantai Dalam, and then you can see in Dalam Pekeliling that was once low cost flat. Now they are building high end apartment over there, right? So these are challenges that the government need to look into, because if nothing done, if, for example, if this idea of having B40 and M40 and the upper middle class in one building, if that's not possible, then we'll be seeing the segregation of our population into the poor, and to so that is very unhealthy, and we do not want that thing to happen. But as you say, the public institution should not be involved in this kind of discrimination. Where what I mean here is, if that land is belonging to the municipal, DBKL or the Selayang, if it is under the municipal ambit, then that modality that you have mentioned in Singapore is a viable option. So the municipality should not be, converting, those Sri Pahang apartment into a luxury apartment. Maybe a private developer may do that, but so we don't have any control over that, because the land belongs to the private entity. But if the land,
sorry, Prof. Just to add, I think the nature of property developer also need to be looked at, because their nature is actually they buy land bank years before. So there's always a negotiation of asking for land banks, and the land banks is actually becoming, even in their financial accounting, is part of their assets valuation of the companies. So they buy way before, and in the end, I mean, for example, like in KL, I think there's a lot of move. For example, like Kampung Baru, they are trying to buy the land banks. They were going to be working now to get the land banks. They will not do the development now, but they were going to buy the land banks. So I think this is something prevention, I think, from diminishing the land that owned by the government. End up, you can't do any affordable house. I mean, my opinion on that.
Yes. So yeah, partly because the cost of financing is very low. Those big developers can easily take a bank loan, or they can easily issue a bond, to purchase those assets. Just like now, there's a lot of merger and acquisition because they can take a bank loan easily to pay for the merger, to pay for the shares buyback. So these are implication of the low interest rate regime which is happening now. And then again, well, if in a communist country like China, these are not possible. Even like in Hong Kong, we can see that half of the island is still a jungle, and the authority purposely do not want to develop that half, that area, because they want to jack up the prices in the urban area, in the cities. So policy is very important, and political will, which is policy, is very important. And I don't see that the Singaporean model is a complicated model for us to adopt. It is a possible one. Then it is up to the government, to listen and to consider, what step need to be done in order to overcome the current problem faced by the low income group or the middle income group, M40, middle M40, basically. Thank you, brother. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. So we have here, some of the survey question that we use a survey, and some of you would like to study, to further your study at INCEIF at the PhD level, so this is one of the interesting, adventure that you may want to pursue, and fulfilling activity that maybe you want to do and get yourself a degree, PhD degree, a doctoral degree, to further enhance your career. And at INCEIF, we are trying to blend the academic and the industrial approach, so that whatever that we have explored and investigated, we can share it with the industry and with the government. And so policy making is part of our parameter in determining our success at INCEIF.
Since there is no further question, then I would like to request all.
Yes.
Prof, can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, I can hear you. A bit breaking here and there.
Yeah, I think my internet is fluctuating. So I was saying, since there is no further questions from the so I would like to request all the participants to switch on their camera so that we can have a photo session.
There's one more question from Brother Anwar, I think.
Yeah,
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Anwar.
Hello, brother.
Yes. It has been some time since our last met in Dubai, I think some 6 years ago. when you presented topic in the Securities and Commodity Association in the Commission in Dubai, if you recall.
Really?
Okay.
You're from Oman. You're from Oman?
That's right. That's right. That's true. That's
true.
true.
Yeah, I can still remember that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you very much. Just feedback from the banker's perspective, since I'm from a banking industry.
Yes.
I understand the model that you try to broach, as well as the cost of fund, which usually becomes a nightmare for the bank to manage. Apart from the payment capability of the people who undertake the housing scheme, especially for the affordable housing scheme. If I can ask your opinion, perhaps one of the study that you can consider, what I've seen in the GCC market is that they have basically constitute of what they call Oman, for example, in the context of Oman, Oman Housing Bank. Yeah, and in some of the GCC states as well, they have the local housing bank for that matter. So in this particular regard, because I think, yes, we have the VBI and we have the, for example, the, excuse me. Sorry, we have the VBI in Malaysia, no doubt about that. But then again, when we try to embed this within the commercial aspect of banks in Malaysia, they are facing with a little bit of, I don't want to use the word hesitates, but then again, apart from the cost of fund, there are an elements of the repayment capability, as I mentioned. There are also an element of the non-performing asset, because fortunately or unfortunately, the reality is that the hard truth is that the large chunk of M40 and B40 are exposed to such risk, and not many banks are willing. This is the hard truth to basically put an ESG element into that. So putting this particular aspect into this whole framework, the GCC states are coming with this housing bank concept. But with the main purpose to address the affordable housing issue in the, especially for those B40 in these states. So do you think perhaps if, let's say, the government set aside, let's say, a capital 100 million on yearly basis, setting up this particular bank, and then accordingly, they will either take over or negotiate with the developers, and then give the direct financing to those affected families or people within that particular category. Do you think will that solve the issue somehow?
Yeah, because certainly it will be an added benefit to the sector. But as I have indicated earlier, that the two main component of cost that is responsible for the high prices. Number one is the high margin taken by the developer and the land cost. And so the finance charge, these are factor that is within the reach of this modality, meaning that this particular model will be able to control the funding component, and therefore we try to minimize the cost of funding for the affordable housing, either affecting the developer or the buyer themselves, right? But the area that we are not able to control would be the profit margin taken by the developer. So we are going for the smaller developer who may be willing to take smaller margin, but if they have access to the fund at a lower cost, and then again we can see if the government is able to give free land, to build those houses. So these are the two things that we can see, viable to do. We have MBBS, Malaysian Builder, the Malaysian Bank Builder Society. MBBS is also specializing in home market. But yes, but a bank that is specially set up to address this issue, it can be a can be a good, a good idea. Meaning that it is only meant to address affordable housing development. You will not be, giving facilities to the T20 group in the purchase of, high cost property. So if that bank can be set up just to address that affordable housing, B40, M40, that would be a very, very good, thing moving forward. Brother Osman,
Anwar.
Anwar, yes, yes, Anwar. Yes,
I've seen they link her with few ministries. For example, in Oman, for example, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Housing, as well as the Ministry of Women and Community Development, because they have statistics. It's meant for specific some part of M40 and all B40. So with that and with some pressure from the government also to some developers, this may work. There are also some interesting study I read in the case of public housing scheme in Slovenia, as well as Spain, whereby being a capitalist, they definitely wanted to make a good profit margin, right? Being a developer, but to compensate that particular margin when the government suppress the price of each unit, I noticed government in Spain specifically they introduced the tax exemption for the developers, for those developers who put a certain threshold of the housing scheme. For example, if you reach 250 units and above, there are certain tax bracket you can enjoy as the developer. So I think this could be also one of the carrot, so for them to offer more units.
That is a possible thing to do. Even we have in Malaysia the Prima, rumah Prima. Yeah, so these are the JLC government linked company, which is meant to address the housing issue, of the upper, M40 and upper M40, but still we see that those prices are way, and still is not able to fulfill. There's still a lot of yes.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, brother. Hope and meet again, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Prof. So I will get on the participants switching on their camera so that we can have a photo session.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. All right.
Okay, you ready? 1,
okay.
2, 3. All right, I've got that.
Okay.
So that comes to the end of this session.
Yes.
Concludes the second research sharing series. Thank you once again, Prof. Dr. Saiful Azhar Rosly, for the great presentation. It was indeed enlightening. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you all for joining. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. However, I would also like to inform that the journal article Structuring Fund for Affordable Housing Investment in Malaysia, which is an exploratory research, is accessible at INCEIF Knowledge Repository.
Thank you.
Platform for INCEIF staff, subscribers. With that, thank you and have a pleasant week ahead.
Thank you, brother Ahmad. Thank you very much, for the chairman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Prof.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, inshallah.